The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
Aloha everyone, I'm geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont of HawaiiTracker.com, and we are your Hawaiian volcano trackers today. We're bringing you guys a Kīlauea, Maunaloa update today. Maunaloa is really quiet, Kilauea is pretty quiet too, but today is the 9-month milestone of the beginning of this eruption, so we'll talk about where we are now, 9 months in, going steady. We will be taking questions and discussing as we go, so let Dane know if you have any questions. We'll be leading discussion on the chat and collecting some things for us to discuss as we go. And anything you want to say at the top here, Dane, before we get into a fairly routine update today?
Not much. I mean, it is hard to believe that we've been going 9 months, considering 2018, which we talk about all the time, was 3 months roughly.
Yeah, 3 months, 4 months, maybe
3 times as long.
Yeah.
We're getting into that. Almost. I wonder if we're gonna go for a year.
Could be, right? I mean, the last time the lava was at the summit, it was there for a full 10 years before the 2018 collapse, building up that pressure in that system. That was what led to that ultimately. So I guess we'll see. We're only in that sense, right? We're 9 months. We had 4 months off, then 5 months before that into it, right? So like a year and a half-ish or so in, maybe.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat, and we'll try and get them into the first Q&A after the first segment. See
All right.
what Philip has to say about them.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, so we'll start off by doing our Kilauea weekly summary. And here we have on screen the USGS HVO KW camera for the last week. Mahalo to Dane for compiling this. So we're seeing day and night flip through for the last week. And you see that bright spot in the middle right in here. That's that most active persistent lava lake. And we have a few spots that at the beginning of the loop on this view, this way is north to the left. So on its western margin and its northwestern, northeastern, and all the way to this eastern margin has had a few breakouts, ooze-up flows around a perimeter that lasted a few days there. Some big flows compared to the size of this lake even. But this is the only one that stayed going the whole week, because really the story over the past week has been that of a depressurization, of a deflation on the summit of the volcano, a long one that's lasted most of the week until earlier today. Now it seems like it's coming back up, but we'll have to check on the status as we go here. But that's been the pattern essentially. Some ooze-up flows around the perimeter at the beginning of the week, and persistent lava lake all throughout. To see a little more detail, we'll flip into the F1 camera thermal here. It's a little more cropped in, but you see there's that persistent lake. There's that southeast pond. You see here is that pit, west pond vent pit, as I've been calling it. And a big ooze-up flow that was early on here on this western edge, and then that northwest one is here. The northeast one is a little bit off the screen, but you do see a little more clearly this easternmost flow here when we loop around back over here, and even the southeast all the way over here. So since we can see a little better, we'll zoom into a few of these features, right? So start off with just looking at this main lava lake complex area. And the lava level is high early on. You don't see a whole lot of exposed pinkish walls between this darker purple and orange here, but then you can see that by this point it actually has grown. You can see a little bit of a gap there. That's that wall of that lava lake, which we were told from the USGS, estimating it's something in the order of 20 feet or 7 meters down lower. So it's interesting to note that a couple of things happen when that lava level drops. One is you see this little isthmus right here. That's essentially a buried lava arch. The lava is going through the arch into that southeast pit and then draining through there as well, recirculating back underneath the crust. You see that drops down, collapses as the lava level drops. See a little bit happening right there. There it goes. But secondarily, down here, you also see this west pond vent area collapsing too, right? You see it's just a small glowing area, then it looks like as the lava level begins to drop, like parts of that roof fall in and it grows in size there, likely as the lava level retreats. So a couple minor changes. If we look over here at the other vents, you see consistent heat, but not a whole lot of little flows necessarily. It's more just putting out gas than lava here. You do see occasional little spots appearing. It looks like something spattered out of there. But if we look other parts of the crater, I'm going to scroll now to look over here at this southeast side, and it's pretty far away in there, but there's that southeast edge of the crater. We see an ooze-up flow coming up here as this thing loops around, but here in the foreground, there's a little hornito, a little spatter cone that's putting out a little flow you can see kind of far away and through a lot of gas probably, but still visible coming up in the camera. So it's interesting to see those acting in sync, and likewise, when this activity stops is when the lava level is dropping in that main crater. So that is mostly what we have here over the last week. We can zoom in a little further. Let's do that. Go into our V1 camera here. So here's a V1 camera. I'll zoom way in on that lava lake and the visible day and night. And here you can see more of that crater wall being exposed in the recent days and early on that high lava level. The isthmus right in there. I'll zoom into that area if I can right here. So there it is. Right there, I see it starts as a little bridge with lava on both sides. As the lava level drops, you see that archway revealed, and it collapses, and you see that gap exposed at present time now. So that's what that looks like. We haven't really seen, that I can tell, any major collapses from elsewhere in the crater walls, and I saw that some of our viewers last week pointed out a few of these other ones, maybe over here as well, that we've seen chunks fall in. We saw the USGS video over here, we saw the Two Pineapples video from over here, we saw chunks of the wall falling in, so maybe what's left is a little more stable since it just collapsed recently. But otherwise, you see the interesting features to look for there. Okay. Still some spattering going on, still circulating. This lava is still moving. It never really stopped within this pit, as it's really just a drop in the level and business as usual otherwise. Interesting status there. So finally, one last camera is the B1. It's looking across from the other side, east to west. So north now is to the right, going this way. And back over here is that glow from that main active lava lake. And you see the ooze-up flows are largely off over here and off to the side. You don't really see a whole lot on this camera so much, right? But do see some glow from this fuming area come up, and it looks like that other Hornado area is something somewhere more over here, or perhaps it's the one right over here on this edge of this crack that goes around. So that's my bet right in there. Don't know how much we can zoom in on that. So quite a few of these popping up. There's one there. The ones we've been looking at, the two bigger ones, are further over here to the right. There and there. It's been glowing quite a bit too. So
we have a. I can hop in real quick. We have a $4.99 super chat from Yan Zhao, who asks, has any volcanologist walked on the lake? And questions asking about any part of the lake. But in general, has anybody really been documented walking on the crusted parts of a lava lake?
Not that I know of. No, mahalo for the donation, Ken. Yeah, so I haven't seen anyone walking to the on top of the crust. I saw that they have landed on that down drop block and areas near that ramp,
right.
And they have walked down. It's kind of in this view that we're showing here. It's off to the right over here, but they kind of like, yeah, maybe right in here now. But like you can walk down this ramp of lava and approach the edge of the flows, but be on solid land, essentially being on a down drop block, but not on an actual crust where they know it's a giant sea of magma below them. And it's oozing up in gigantic, like 20-acre flows or something, like, you know, at a drop of a hat here and there. So no, they haven't done that,
right? To
my knowledge,
yeah,
I don't know that they even fly over that. To be honest, right? You only see them flying over the edge of it, just in case, right?
True. Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely. If it gets you have one of those ooze-ups come up behind you, if you were going to venture out, it would be not a good day.
Yeah, you can clearly see that there's been thought about it in those flight plans, right? And like, just like they didn't want to fly over the ocean because, you know, they don't want to have to have any safe egress there. Like same kind of thing. They don't want to fly over the middle of that thing and have something go wrong and have to land in the middle. It's like not an option. So there's apparently not even going across, and just learned how to photograph it from every angle around and then get that 3D image from that composition of that rotating perimeter flight. It's pretty interesting how they've gotten around it. So pretty cool.
Right.
Pretty cool tangent there. Mahalo.
And thanks for the question.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's our last week-long compilation. We'll take a quick look here at what's happening right now, and I'll have to reload these view from a couple hours ago and from the B1 once again. Pretty clear view. You don't see a whole lot of major change happening there. This was the KW camera earlier. And let's see here if this camera has cleared up. Yeah, it has cleared up a bit. It seems like there was some water in the lens earlier, but it seems like it's burned off. And the shadow of the sunset's starting to come across the crater floor. And we'll probably see the red here a little more prominently once the shadow marches across here. Pretty cool. But otherwise, there's nothing major. I don't see any giant breakouts elsewhere. There's nothing quite obvious. And that's not a big surprise because, as we've said, the lava level dropped down. And let's look at the F1 camera. And the lava level is coming up a little bit. But it's still, if you look at the gap right there, and it still has a ways to come to restore to its former height. So it still hasn't quite recovered from that large depressurization deflation event earlier in the week. So not a big surprise that all the activity is still in that main lake. And here's a view a couple hours ago, a couple bubbling spots moving across that crusted lake. That gap going to that southeast pit. Let me reload it here and we'll get a view a couple hours later, as in closer to now. And bubbling spots are now over here. The cliff might be slightly shorter here, but you can see there's the gap flowing to the southeast pit. So that is now. And how it's been for the past week here. So with that, we will transition to today we'll talk about our volcanic hazards. And our main hazard here is the gas. So starting off by showing here, gas levels within the national park have all been in the green. We've had our typical summer weather with trade winds from the northeast, blowing the plume away from the viewing areas, so everything's still good, and actually slightly more northerly. So if you look at this little inset down here, it's a little bit more offshore than it is going to Kahuku. Kahuku's actually in the green today a little bit too, so a little bit of a reprieve there and clearing out a little bit. And if we go to our purple air monitors island-wide, let me reload this as well. Then we'll see everything is in the green, and the highest value on the map is down here in South Kona, like at 11 ppm. So not very much. This is pretty low. Not to say that some areas haven't had the values come in higher, right? So here's the past week, and you can see that Wood Valley had one spike for some reason earlier, but otherwise has been even clear of the yellow when we zoom in there. Let me see if I can look at somewhere else like Ocean View. Or no, that's Kahuku. So still coming into the yellow on certain days, depending on the wind direction there. And if you guys can see that, it's hard to zoom in on these little interactive graph things on the web displays, but there. So there's a yellow. I can't put my mouse over it. Yellow right in there, yellow, and the graph is going over it there. All right, so the forecast of VOG for the next few days from weather.hawaii.edu, the VOG mapping project, VMAP, is such as shown here, right? Here's their animation. It's worth noting that their SO2 emission rate is a little bit on the low side because of this long deflation we've been in, 1,200 tons per day. But still, you can see that the pattern is still affecting, for the most part, South Kona and Kau. Right, so it still happens. It's a little bit worse in the winter than it is in the summer. In the summer, depending on the pattern, it can clear out. And it seems like in many areas that is the case, but you can see that still uphill Kau or South Kona pretty much always get it all the time. Right, so we'll transition from hazards to our lava viewing. We don't have a whole lot on that, but we'll have a review today. Everything is still looking good, and then lava level is still up. You know, even with the lava in the pit, only in the pit, it's still visible from all those locations, especially Kanakakoi in the south, and then this whole stretch of Kupinaʻipali, Old Waldron Ledge Trail, not quite the Volcano House back in here on the east. So you can see the lava lake from there, and then here from the north, Uekahuna, Kilauea overlook, you can see this northeast quadrant with this overflows that occur there. So kind of just recapping, here's that view from Uekahuna from a while ago, but gives you an idea of what you can see through that gap. It's just a phone shot, so you can see some of those flows in that little notch visible in the landscape there. And this is our KW camera that we use as a proxy. So we can look at this back sector back in here to see maybe what might be visible through that gap over there. Right. So if I zoom it way into back there, we'll leave that lava lake in the bottom corner here so we can keep our bearings. But there is those ooze-up flows over here, and you can see some over here, and not anything big right in the middle, but there has been stuff visible earlier in the week, and less so as the volcano deflated here later on. So not quite as good from there in the recent week, but still good from Kanakakoi. The view looks something like this most of the time. There's Maunaloa in the background. This is courtesy of Two Pineapples, who will be reporting to us with a special report. Not today, but in the future, right there in a special expedition. We'll just tease that a little bit for them. And if you want to learn more, you can go exploring, or we'll come back to you, up to you guys in the future. Kanakakoi, we've used the S1 camera as a proxy So here's a last week from the S1 camera of that view. And actually the camera moves a little bit, but you can see that main persistent lava lake. Some of the lava falls as the lava starts draining first of all, not quite a week ago. And then since then, everything coming back. Ooze-up flows around the perimeter there too as well. So that's the S1 camera, and I thought I had one here where it was actually loaded right now, but I don't. It seems like I lost that. So that's the S1 view. Viewing report. Finally, Kupina'ipali. This is what the view looks like from there. This was taken a few weeks ago, but you can see zooming in where that active lava lake area actually is there. So the lava level a little bit lower, you'd see more of the cliff walls, but as we showed you in a video from a few weeks ago, sometimes that's when you see the collapses happen when lava level is down. So pretty cool, exciting time to come see the volcano from all the different sides. It's still a good time to come and see. So with that, we will transition to our media of the week, courtesy of the USGS.
We do have a little special one just sent to us. If you want to pull it up, I sent it over to you. From two pineapples from Maunaloa looking down at Kilauea right about now. From the red cabin up on the slopes of Maunaloa.
Awesome. Let's see if I can get that up here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Not a lot of people make it up there. I mean, it is quite the hike.
Yeah, so they've actually reached the summit. Then pull those pictures from the summit. But this is pretty awesome view of Kilauea from up there on the flanks of Maunaloa. So you can expect we'll have more content to feature of theirs and some collaborations about some Maunaloa stuff as well coming up in the future. So mahalo to pineapples. Yeah, there it is. Kilauea. You can see that big exposed silver bank. There's a yellow right there, and the gas coming out from that eastern side, right? Similar is that Uekahuna view. Maybe they can see some. I don't know if I can quite see through the cloud quite at the right angle there.
They say they have two bars of reception above Red Hill. Wind is 30 miles an hour plus. They're freezing. They're in the chat right now, by the way.
Oh, right on. Thanks, guys. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, good enough reception to catch the stream. I can. There is our test. If anyone's wondering, they're testing many things, and that's one. So awesome. All right. So let me see. Where was I? We're talking about some of the USGS media, which is here. We have a couple different releases. This one goes back to, it's not quite a week ago, views from the edge of the lava lake. So here's the kind of big ooze-up flow. You can tell by the texture of the lava, this big flat crust, right? It was all liquid at the same time and it froze as a big sheet. I'm talking about like right there, that thing, big sheet looking flow. And different texture over here, you can see it's oozing out from the edge and making these little pahoi flows here at the margin. So this is the kind of activity that can happen as the lava first oozes up, makes a big pond. That pond can overturn, and as the pond crusts over, then it starts oozing out the sides there. And you see some discoloration where the gases are also trying to escape from this underground covered crack. That's the edge of this rising crater crust, right? Lava lake crust. So that was June 24th, photo by Dr. Matt Patrick. And a different view looking east by Matt Patrick same day, and looking at that lava level was still high at that point, spattering over here at that eastern edge, and you can see that little covered archway of the lava going through that submerged pathway over here. And even that lava lake in the southeast pit was overturning and forming a crust. You can tell from this image right here. It's interesting to see that pattern of the slabs of crust where they're more solid and a little bit thicker, and where they're so deforming and pulling apart. And the offsets almost like little fault lines, like little transform faults there. Like it appears almost like you could be looking at a map of the seafloor right here, right? This could be that Eastern Pacific rise or Mid-Atlantic ridge, and you have these transform faults in between it. So you can see why geologists like looking at these things at different scales. So pretty cool. That was a release on the 24th. There was another release from the 29th from the USGS. Mahalo USGS team. Big team putting all this stuff out for all the public to consume. So here, June 29th, picture from the south with a much lower lava level. You can see the cliff wall is exposed there. There's that little gap, that far wall back in here. And you can see all around, not quite see, but a little bit of a hint of that, what essentially is a lava tube now that's coming from that West Pond Bank area down into the lake. And you can see a little bit of that, hint of that right there, but not quite the right angle. And this one has a good caption, photo by El Galant. And they do say here, the active lake is 23 feet, 7 meters below the rest of the lake surface. And so talking about from here to here, right? So that they're saying at that moment, 23 feet, 7 meters. And so the lava maybe wasn't always at the very lip, it was spilling over once in a while, but so we'll call it about 20 feet, about 7 meters there below that margin. They also say that the main portion of the lake is 3 feet or 1 meter above the small pinched out section. So by that they mean the section in this pit over here. And so a little bit of a slope coming down this way and 3 foot, 1 meter drop across there. Pretty interesting stuff. See lots of this gas coming up here. I see there's some other questions about the gas here and whether it's really steam or gas, right? And so the gas that comes out of the volcano is a combination of water vapor, CO2, and SO2. So there is a large part of it is steam. That can come from the groundwater in the area, trying to come close to the magma or get entrained in the magma or get entrained around the magma, or, you know, come around the magma. It can be more steamy than sulfury, to put it that way. But clearly you can see where it's more yellow, like spots like this, where it's more elemental sulfur. Let's see if I can get it to respond right there, where it's a little more yellow, it's a little more sulfurous, right? And some of these areas over here too, where you see these more of these cracks. If it's just steam, you imagine a rock is going to turn more of a reddish color. It's almost like it's oxidizing it or rusting the iron in the rock. So it's more like a baking appearance rather than this discoloration of whitish or yellow. So that's one kind of hack, right? Visual. You can't always rely on it, but good thing to keep in mind there. So here's a close-up view, also by Galant, or Gallant. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. Apologies if I'm misspeaking here. And showing a small hornado degassing on the surface of the crater floor at the summit. These are once again saying hornados are small rootless cones that are fed by the tube network within a lava lake. Alteration from persistent degassing is what causes some of the variation in color you see in the area around a hornado. Note the yellows and reds. So yeah, you can see some of the red as well in there. Okay, we'll keep it moving here to the last image, I believe. The lava level down within the pit, but you can still see this line of spatter bursts coming up from that surface of the lake, right? You can tell where the lake, where the crust has this more of this texture, where it's part of that thicker slab. Maybe when the lake was slowing down, it was forming a thicker crust. But as the level dropped, you can see there's clear areas of flatter, younger lava filling in, right? It's almost like you have, back to our tectonic plate analogy, it's almost like these could be the older crust and stuff floating higher among the newer, older stuff here on the bottom. So interesting. They say here, the areas between the smooth silvery plates on the surface spatter vigorously as the plates get dragged down into the molten lake and new plates of rapidly cooled lava form in their place. So pretty nice. So that's the question there. Let's see a question coming in from Tiffany. Mahalo, Tiffany, for joining us all the time. Did more fissures form? So no, there's not really more fissures. Everything is coming out from that same pathway through the tube system under the lava lake and feeding the lava lake. So we're just looking at kind of minor variations on that surface crust over the pond of lava there. So just kind of surface small scale stuff. Hopefully I got that intent there that you had. So all right. That's last picture. Yeah, I believe that's the last picture. So I see we
Well,
have some questions piling in, but first, sorry.
I was just seeing if you're ready to transition. I'm not just trying to figure out what we're doing with the questions.
Yeah, I see that.
All right, so
questions are piling up, but what we're going to do first is a little community corner real quick and talk about the fact that there are 2 events upcoming in the next couple of weeks here in Puna. One is coming up this weekend, in a couple of days, Activate Puna block party in Pahoa Town, 4 to 10 p.m. on Saturday. And to give you some idea, this is some of the promotional stuff, right? All ages welcome. It's free, donations encouraged, with proceeds to a scholarship fund for seniors from Pahoa High. So there's, I believe, at least one stage, maybe several stages there, right? And several groups performing. There's all the musical performers. Bring beach chairs to sit, enjoy the music. No outside drinks, food, or bottles, please. And a little bit more about Activate Puna here. A community revitalization, placemaking project that brings people together for enriching experiences around art, food, and music. And if you're interested in being a vendor, then you can go and check that out as well. So that's an event coming up this weekend, but there is another one coming up the following week, so it's like a week and a half from now. Tuesday, July 12th, 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. at presentations. Doors open at 3:30 p.m. With a whole resource row of tables and craft stations, food trucks, all that kind of stuff there, right? So you can check that out, register for that as well. The officials will be giving updates on infrastructure, boat ramp, all that stuff, starting at 4:30. So that is a community corner, and with that, we can go to our mahalos, Dane.
All right, so we do have some mahalos to say out. First, want to thank everybody that tuned in today. We are reliant on viewers like you to really drive the algorithm and, get it out there to more viewers. If you like this type of content, we encourage you to share it. That is the best way to get it out there, but also the comments, the likes, the subscriptions. It all works to help promote the channel. We did have a couple donations come through. Want to acknowledge those real quick. Starting with Yan Zhao threw in a 1999 super chat and says, "I watch the show every week. Appreciate it, Yan." We had a $35 super chat from longtime supporter Gary Bryan, who says, "Thanks, Philip and Dane, for the work you put into these updates. Mahalo as always, Gary." And then we had a $100 super chat from Tim Hastine. No comment included. Really appreciate the support, guys. Thank you all. We also want to thank Leo's Bar and Grill, who has been our longtime supporter as well. They have 2 locations, one in Pahoa, one in Orchidland. Orchidland location is the new one, and that's where Kaiko Marzo performs on Thursday nights. So if you want to get a little treat of a concert type thing, I'd recommend taking advantage of that. You're going to need reservation because it's always packed in there on the Thursdays. But they've been a long-time supporter. They have 2 different menus and 2 different sets of hours at these establishments, so definitely check them out. And if you're out in Pahoa and looking for a bite to eat, we recommend them. And with that,
mahalo, you guys.
I believe we can dive into some questions. I'm all for all the sport, yeah, definitely. Some of these I think were taken up, but Bob asked, this one wasn't done. Aren't there more cultural, historic considerations in Hawaii versus Iceland, more sacred in Hawaii, perhaps? And this comes from a conversation in the chat about how in Iceland, the tourist helicopters are kind of flying over the thing, the active vent.
That's a pretty loaded question, to be honest. So, I mean, to compare the 2 cultural histories of a people, and, one where they've had Iceland's so close to Europe, and and it was, the Vikings were, it goes back a long time, right? And you'd imagine that indigenous people didn't survive as well there, we'll put it that way, as they actually did in Hawaii, which, I know has had massive, tragedy and impact, but Hawaiians are still here, and there are some places that there are native peoples are not around anymore at all, right? So comparing it to is really difficult. Yeah, I think in that sense, we can see that here in Hawaii, we do very highly value the Hawaiian culture, and that is a consideration in all things, right? Even the national park operates in a way where they consult the Hawaiian kupuna for changes that they propose in the park. Even though they don't have to, there's no federal law and anything like that, but they feel it's culturally appropriate to be respectful and involved and follow, incorporate the traditional protocol that exists here. Yeah. Right.
Just from an outside looking at it perspective, looking at the Iceland stuff, the footage that coming out of there, very incredible. There was many times I was like, that wouldn't happen. There's no way that happens here. Not going to go into the details as to why, but it would be related to that type of stuff. And you just see things. It's like, nope, that wouldn't fly. Not even a question, like type of thing. Yeah. But that is a good question, Bob. Appreciate it.
And
we have one. Oh,
yeah, and just to say a little more, I mean, it also depends on the size of the eruption, right? Like right now, even in Hawaii, right? In Hawaii, the eruption's happening in the park at the summit. It's everything's great. We can smile about it and take time and do this or that, talk about whatever, But it's not like 2018. It was a huge flow. It was an inhabited area, and suddenly it's a whole different ballgame, right? La Palma is a whole different ballgame than Iceland was. Right, you didn't see the tourist helicopters in La Palma, did you? Because it was burning everyone's house. Everyone was evacuated. So it was different, right? In Iceland, it was an uninhabited area. It was essentially one of the smallest eruptions they've had, which makes for a very spectacular imagery with not a whole lot of danger if it's the smallest eruption you have. So it's a lot of things go into it, right? Like Kilauea might have.
There's also the national park. The national park, just the restrictions that come with being the national park and the federal government. A whole bunch of things that's inherited, just rules that existed before the eruption type of thing, or this particular eruption. Even though it's confined in the national park, it's completely safe. Drones are completely forbidden, but that's at all national parks, right? That's just true across. Right. So, yeah, it's kind of complicated, but yeah, there are a lot of factors in there.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest answer is that we do highly value our Hawaiian, cultural heritage here. Right, that's we couldn't value it any more than we do. Maybe it's highly valued. Right, to try to compare it to someone else brings in the history and gets complicated. Is kind of how I'd answer it. But it's a good point that we think about that a lot. Comes up a lot.
Emma asks, how far from that next ledge is the lava lake currently? It looks like it's getting close to one of those nearest ooze-ups.
Okay, so let's see. I'll switch to our screen here, and let's see. I actually have the map up from back in a month ago in May, but when the USGS included these cross sections of where the lava levels actually are. So the lava levels come up a little bit since then, but not a huge amount. And to give you some idea, each of these, I don't know if you guys can see these little lines, each of these little lines is 50 meters. So here, if I zoom in, I'm trying to zoom in so you guys can actually see it on your screen too, but that's where the water was. And there's where it was after, where the lava came and filled it in up until May last year. And here is where it's come up to from September till now. Right? And here is the next little ledge down. So it really is, that little ledge is as short as we've seen it, considering we saw it, that tall, and we saw it all the way this tall right at one point in time. So it really is apparently almost there. But as far as how far it actually is, you're still looking at about 50 meters or 150 ish, very roughly, feet there, right? And because, as you see, it's spreads out farther the higher up it fills slower and slower the higher it goes, right? So it's going to take a little while. Even still, our estimate is, I would say, before Thanksgiving at this point still. It would be reasonable given the volumes and rates we're seeing. So that's it.
And we have one more from Robert, who has an observational question. How fast has the crust moved across that active lava lake? I guess we could.
Oh, that's a good question. You can't really tell from the time lapses because maybe
it's too much gap.
Yeah, I mean, so when lava is really churning, there's like a natural speed that it goes, right? Kind of a natural flow as it forms crust, and it kind of gets recycled at the other end. as the lava level is dropped and it kind of lurches, then it obviously gets slower and thicker and all that. So, you know, maybe you're talking about what the upper limit may actually be. Might be a better thing to target as far as what we try to discover.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I've seen reports exactly from this eruption, but in other eruptions we typically see it's on the order of like a meter a second, you know, a yard a second kind of thing. It's, you know, normally if it's going faster than, I don't know, 2 or 3 meters per second, something like that, then the crust doesn't actually form. You kind of just see it bubbling and kind of the surface disturbed kind of thing, right? But the fact that you see like a crust actually forming means it's going somewhat slow enough that that's actually happening. So if that whole lake is, I don't know, call it, what is it, maybe 200 meters? I'm kind of guessing.
Yeah.
To go and look across, something like that. Then it's taking 200 seconds, right? So that's like 3 to 5 minutes to get across, you know, so maybe we could be more generous.
That seems
maybe,
right. I'm just
maybe in 2 minutes.
At the video of it. And
2-3 minutes. Yeah, we do have some videos that they released, right? There was one last week.
There's a difference though between the straightest path from the vent to that drainage area, that cascading pool, and anywhere along the sides, right? So that's the straight line is moving probably maybe twice as fast as the perimeters type of thing, but you're in ballpark on this, I think.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I thought there was a video that was released
This one
week.
I'm looking at is pretty good
From the USGS.
Yeah, I just dropped the link to you.
Let's see if it'll open.
The 26th of April is the one I'm looking at.
I went in the wrong spot. Let's see if I can get that to load on here. Doesn't always work to try to load things on the fly. We'll see during the stream.
Right.
Looks like it's going.
Sometimes it works.
Yeah, so that gives a pretty good idea. It's kind of hanging every couple of seconds here on my screen, but if I zoom it in, you see a little bit there. Yeah, it's like you can see as it approaches the rapids, it goes a little faster. But I'll estimate about a meter a second.
Transfer screens over.
Oh yeah, I don't think I just transferred my screen today.
No,
it's over here.
Yeah.
There. There's a rapids in the top left, and there's the crest coming across. You can't, it's hard to tell against the wall. We know that might be something like 20 feet or something like that, right? So, it's decently fast when it goes across, but it's not churning enough, right? You can see that where it's moving faster in that rapids right there, that's where the crust breaks up. So that's a good example for that. Let's see if I can pull it back and get it to go again.
Yeah, I think that really showed it there.
The difference in the crust.
You can see there's not much of a crust on this thing by the time it reaches across that into that cascading pool. It's only thin crust.
This thing does not too happy with trying to play while we're streaming here.
Right.
I have this video here somewhere.
You can also see the lava levels pretty high in this thing, so it's it has a decent output going right now in this video.
Right. Let's see, I think I might have this one too. Is that it? Lava Lake at the summit, May 26th. Oh yeah, so
that might be the same one. Oh, that May 6th or May 26th. Oh yeah, that one's really full.
Yeah, it's really full. Let me zoom it in. Let's see if it'll start here. There. So that's in real time. There's a gas vent down here. So that was it. All right, that's probably enough time on that.
All right, I think that does it for first round of questions. We will be doing one more at the end. If anybody has any questions that haven't been asked, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll try and get to them.
Awesome. All right, so let's see. Let me get the next set of things up here, which is going to be our monitoring data. So Where is my monitoring data? Here we go. We'll start off just mentioning that this is all, of course, courtesy of the USGS HVO that's putting out all these updates daily for Kilauea, weekly for Maunaloa, and all these graphs and photographs that we're sharing with you guys for the most part. The ones that we're not sourcing from our viewers. So if you do have your own to submit, please do. I always appreciate that. So, all right. The updates for today from USGS. Total rise of the crater floor of 120 meters, 394 feet. That's the same value as last week. It's still from flyover on June 17th. And so the SO2 rate most recently, 1,200 tons per day. That's a little bit on the low side, but that's kind of within a trend of deflation, and otherwise nothing unusual from the East Rift or Southwest Rift. That's the crux of it there. We're going to go into a little more detail in our monitoring today. So starting off with our lava depth up here. Here's a lava depth for the whole eruption from September to now. You can see it's still been rising with some variations in the lava level visible kind of in the middle, but the pattern essentially has been up. Right? And if I zoom into this upper right side, you'll see some variations occurring more visibly here at the right end of it as well. Partly it's the laser pointing into the area that's fluctuating more, and partly it's we're having big fluctuations too. So for the last week, let me see if I can reload this just to make sure we have the most current graphs, because some of these graphs were only updated still from this morning, but take what we can get. So last week of lava depth until 8:30 this morning is what the graph has given us here. I wonder if I can force it to do more. Let's see if I can force it to load more. God, I've been trying, but no, I think it's still fresh as we get. So 8:30 this morning. Level had been coming down from about a week ago. Here's a week ago. So 5 days ago or so started coming down. 6 days ago, and then essentially it's been at this low level for the last 3 days, 4 days or so. Right. So the tilt shows it clearly as well. Up here at a range of about 3 microradians down to -1, so it's a 4 microradian drop. Not a huge amount, but decent size, right? And you can see that it drops down. It kind of flattens out after 2 days maybe. And it stays in the flat until the very right end of the graph over here, where by 8:30 this morning you started to see a little bit of the signal come in on this summit plot. We'll see it better in some of the other plots, not to worry, but we'll keep looking through what we have from the typical views. 1 month lava depth. There it is, that big drop down, and staying down for longer than we've seen in a while. The last drop down where lava stayed at a low level for days, I want to say it was back like in March or February or something like that. It's been a while. Several months for sure. So interesting to see that happening. But not to fret, the lava is still there, coming back up. And here's our typical 1 month tilt plot. Maybe a slight rising pattern, but hard to tell as much on the right side. So I loaded here the regular Wikahuna straight data as well, so you could see here by about 5 minutes ago, this tilt signal has come much of the way back up here. Right. So there it is. We should see the lava level follow. Hard to tell when the graphs are not updated today. We'll see maybe tomorrow or whenever they update in a few hours here, whether we have a similar, we've been keeping an eye on. The reason this is interesting is we've been keeping an eye on whether when a tilt comes up, if we have a pulse of lava come in right away, and then a delay that exists before the lava level rises further. Right, we had a gap that existed here, and then we had a shorter gap, and a shorter gap as well. So that's maybe informing us about how open a the pathway is from the magma reservoir below. So that's why that's interesting. So I'm curious to see what this story tells us. We'll come back and touch on this next week when we have the data. So SO2, we've talked about where the gas is going, and here's how much is coming out. You can see it's been varying pretty close to the tilt values, especially recently here. 3 low values during the last week, all during this long deflation, and before that, averaging a little bit higher, with low spots during deflations, high spots, then also some big fluctuations during times that seem fairly steady in a tilt. that are not quite clear exactly why. Maybe there's some other mechanism besides deflation and inflation that's driving gas fluctuations here, right? Even during what looks like relatively steady tilt. In any case, it's all within that regular range. It's been at least 1,000 tons per day and up to at most 4,000 tons per day, and within the last week between 1,000 and 1,500 tons per day. Down over here. Let's plot these 3 data points down here on the right. So that is the gas, but this tilt plot reminds me to go and look at some of the tilt data a little more closely. So let's look at 1 month tilt on Kilauea, all across what's available. So looking at the 2-day plot at Uekahuna right here, there's basically zoomed way in. And this is updated until 5 minutes ago, so you can see the level of the tilt level was low and pretty flat, and then started coming up a little bit after 6 a.m. this morning, and it's been coming up, and it hasn't quite flattened out yet. It's still coming up. That's the last 2 days. For the last week, we're not really seeing it show up on that plot, but these plots can update at different times. That's why it's worth checking down here in the bottom right. When you look at these, what the date actually says, right? This one says 8:30 this morning, whereas this one says 5:47 this afternoon. So that's the more updated one. Looking at Uekahuna, this is the one we just showed for the last month up here. Right? You can see the pattern of deflation inflations. And scrolling over to Sand Hill, we can still see similar deflation-inflation pattern when they occur here, 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 and here. But you see that the overall trend is that of a deflating source, right? So interesting to see that that pattern of this kind of maybe slowly rising inflation is only here at Uekahuna so far. Don't see it at Sand Hill. Our Kilauea station is down, unfortunately. The summer camp station comes in and out, and it's hard to tell just by showing it on the screen by itself, but if I zoom it out a little bit, it resembles most closely the Uekahuna station, actually. These two seem to match up right there. So similar kind of pattern. You don't see it quite fully, but maybe the volcano is swelling more so under Uekahuna area, under that main area, and southeast towards that east edge of the caldera, and not really spreading beyond there, which is interesting, right? Sand Hill is an area that we saw a lot of activity in the intrusion that preceded this eruption, but really it seems to be not involved in this eruption so much right now. Elsewhere in the East Rift, the escape road, you see all these up and down patterns are all the day and night signals, but I'm not even going to zoom it in because their overall pattern is that basic down, deflation. Pu'o'o, one station is offline, but the other one is showing down. Further down Rift, Jonica, showing down, so nothing unusual happening anywhere on the rift zone, and we have no operational south flank stations that I've found at the moment. So GPS will be what we look at next. First, let me come back here to our typical GPS plot. So at the summit, we normally look at the distance between Uekahuna and Crater Rim in the north here, north to south of the caldera. Right, that's a distance, and we've seen that it's essentially been expanding as the north and the south move further and further apart. Now, right here in our very further right part, we see that's dropped down quite a bit, but we've seen these little drops seem to correspond to big deflation-inflation events too. So more important is the average than these little wiggles up and down here. Right, so that's the overall pattern. Looks like currently down, but the overall pattern is still up. Whereas at Pu'o'o, this NPOC to jacuzzi length, you can see it's been getting closer together. The distance is getting shorter, getting smaller, and it's been going down. It has some small variations sometimes too. But nothing has changed there with those patterns. So looking in a little more detail at the GPS, we can start at the caldera, and now these are all different directions, right? So each of these plots is showing this is an east-west direction, this is a north-south direction, and this is an up and down direction, right? So these two stations, this is Uekahuna in the northwest and Byron's Ledge in the east, have very similar patterns. That's why I show them together. You can see that the ups have very similar patterns here. The north has very similar patterns, and the only difference east and west is that these things are mirror images of each other, actually, because the lava lake, Halemaʻumaʻu, is in between them in the center, right? But what you can basically see is you can see the eruption. This is a 2-year plot. So this goes back to the eruption that began in end of 2020 to 2021 right here. And then you can see afterwards it built up at a the summit's still being pushed to the north in this case. And then erupts again. And then really since then has not been pushed as quickly, hasn't been building back up to the north quite as fast, right? Byron's Ledge is actually reversed and has moved to the south a little bit in that direction over there. So interesting how different parts of the crater have like different blocks of rock that move a little bit differently one with respect to the other. We go to the south edge of the crater. At the outlet, we see the intrusion that precedes the eruption right there. And otherwise, we see movement to the south. Movement to the south. And similarly, up for the eruptions, intrusion and eruption, and down since, right? And then in this case, these are both moving to the east. So on the East Rift, look at the up first, because up is always, if magma is swelling underground, it's likely to be pushing the ground up. That's kind of the first thing we'll usually look for, right? So when you see it going down and down, then over Kamomoa and Pu'u'o going down and down, it's the same everywhere. The whole rift zone, everything further down at Jacuzzi going down, Jonica all the way down, everything is going down. Right? It's also going to the south. This is south, moving south at Jacuzzi, moving south at Pu'u'o, south at Kananuyohamo, right? That's the way that the south flank actually moves, right? But it's moving south and down, so it's kind of like sagging as it's sliding away from the rift there. And even still, that distance from Pu'u'o to Jacuzzi is contracting, as we saw in that earlier plot, right? So all that's is interesting. It's kind of all what we already knew. I don't have to spend too long on that because this, the rift zone is not doing anything unusual. It's still contracting pretty much everywhere. We're looking at the south flank. This is Ahua, right? And you can see that the south flank also has this up signal as well. But I'm going to focus more in on this north-south signal. It's telling us what the south flank is doing. So you can see it's moving south. It goes so faster when an eruption is about to happen, and then it kind of sags in response to the beginning of the eruption, and then down, and then sags in the next eruption like that, right? So Ahua, Puhimau, you can see everything is moving south, moving south, moving south. Where it gets interesting is when we go over to Makauapui, and you can see that that area of that south flank was going south. But really, since September 2021, it's been coming back to the north at Makauapui, and we look also, and it's still down, right? It's going south. So this is actually going north and east and down. That's the direction that it's sagging. And Kalapana Trail also moving to the north and east and down, right? So this could be that area northeast of here by Makauapui may be one of the reservoir areas of the East Rift Zone that fed Pu'u'o eruption and all of that. So maybe as magma is withdrawing from there, you can see everything kind of sagging, and an actually localized contraction there. So to kind of show you guys where this actually is, and we can finish off the south flank. Everywhere else, especially if you want to look west, you see everything moving south, south, south. Everything's moving south in the south flank everywhere else. So if you go to the USGS webpage, and this is a little bit of a risk to try to manage this thing on a live update here, but let me try to show you guys how this actually works. So here's a main USGS page. And when you first load it, it gives you a map that just shows you these triangles right down here, right? So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to click on this filters. I'm going to come down to the instruments. And it's not showing to me. Okay, let's see, maybe if I resize it.
It almost looked like it was going to work.
Filters. Okay, I'll resize it and do it this way. Instruments. Come on, instruments. No? Let's reload it again. I hate to say it, I always wish this thing works, but rarely does it cooperate with me when I try to do it live.
Yeah.
Instruments.
This is This is more of an issue with the live and the website not getting along together than it is the site. If you load it up yourself, the tab is.
All right.
But when we
Try
do
it.
live things and are stressing the computers, things get weird.
Could be, although this website gives me issues when I'm not doing live also, I hate to say. But it's not doing any better during a live either. So, filters, instruments.
I'm going to do it on mine just to make sure it's actually working.
Yeah, I had it working before. I did test it before I turned this on, believe it or not, but like this is an issue. And, it's always asking me to like take the survey and give my feedback, but it only works once you close your USGS page, and like my USGS page never closes, so I never actually get to. Plus, I want to be nice. So, anyways,
yeah, but it is actually working on the thing when it does. Oh well,
if I load it. But okay, so if you go on here and you click on instruments, you can actually show it. I'm not sure. It'll actually give you a list of instruments, and you can click on. It's usually too much to look at all at one time, right? So I normally will filter out and show only, in this case, like the GPS and the tilt, for example.
I know that used to be a possibility, and we do that all the time, but it looks like it's changed, and now that's not a thing.
Yeah, so this is what I tested
it's just
earlier.
grouping all the cams
and
stations together on mine.
That's if you click up on the... So there's a tab at the top. That's like the little button list almost. The one below that is the filters. Like that's the one that has them grouped.
There it is. Okay. And you can pick either one to load.
Oh, wait. Oh, nope. It almost did something. Okay. I'm sorry, USGS. I really wanted to feature your website today, but what can you do?
Yeah.
You're like, for however many times I've tried so far. In any case, so if you click on that, right, and basically it will show up on this map over here. It'll show up like little stars for your GPS. And if you click on that, it'll give you a little window, and then it has like little graph in there that has essentially these plots of tilt and of GPS that I'm showing you guys here. Right, so that's kind of a way you can go and explore kind of where they are. Since I can't get that on here, oh look, they appeared. I zoomed in far enough and they appeared. Okay, so I can't. So there they are. Look, there's the tabs. There's the instruments, and I'm going to turn off the camera. I'm going to turn off the gas. I'm going to turn off the seismometer. So GPS is star and tilt meter is this little red bar. So for example, PO tilt meter, you can click on that. Then it'll give you a little window here. You can click on a tilt for 2 days, for example, but in this case, unfortunately, no data. And if you click on sometimes your GPS, that one doesn't give you any data. If you click on this one, jacuzzi, then this one does give you some data, right? So, but the stations that we're looking at that have this difference are that one, Makai Makapui, so right there. And the Kalapana Trail one is right there. So it's kind of just this one little sector right in here. So if I zoom it out, right in there. So Kilauea is filling at its summit. It seems to be pushing the south flank this way. Right? The east rift is contracting for the most part. Right? But still, south flank is moving. And somehow, this little zone right in here seems to be, I don't know if it's getting pinched or exactly what, but something funny is going on right in there, where this section is sagging a little bit more to the north. Right? So in any case, not only is there no magma going into the rift, it's doing something funny because it seems to be emptying in a funny way. So more empty than usual, perhaps, might be a better way to think of it. And no increased threat to the lower east rift because of that is a takeaway message here. Right, so that's our extra deep dive on all the GPS and the tilt today and our monitoring. Now, interesting that all this is happening, that this summit gathering, this is the plot we showed last week of the incremental volume rate, right? So estimated at 4.2 cubic meters per second coming in last week. That was for the last 5 weeks. Before that was in the 3s. And we've seen it peak as recently as high as close to 6, right? But we were really probably averaging around, we'll call it maybe a little under 4 or something like that, right? So that's been our average. So with this rate essentially rising, right, and it's still not going in a rift zone, that's interesting to think about how that's really developing the network of magma in the summit region, right? So still all signs are good, and even though magma's coming in, it's all staying in the summit, not really going elsewhere from that. And just to give you guys, so in this rate 4.2, give you guys some kind of frame of comparison, just to repeat it one more time. Here's the rate from the Pu'u'o days from 1996 to 2002. And you can see a large variation of all these different data points, right? And you can see this graph is not exactly the same thing, cubic meters per day, but I've annotated it. This up here is about 14 cubic meters per second. 10 is about in there. And 4 is about in here, right? So 4.2, we're right around in this zone of right in the middle of all this data, right? And you can see the fluctuations of where to go up to 6, or where to go down to like 1 or 2, like all be within a range of what we've seen in the past when we have had open pathways to the surface for long periods of time. And Pu'u'o was our most recent example of that. So I wanted to show this because it's interesting as well to think about how we've had intrusions, right, in that area up in the upper southwest rift, but really we haven't seen a whole lot of movement of the ground over there since then, right? So this is an image out of a USGS professional paper, just showing a different way that in detail we imagine these magma systems, right? So we often draw just like the magma reservoir chamber as this big blob like this. There's a zone of mush, but this is showing more like where you have more of a mush, and then you might have these blades of lava that come in and actually can come in and get parked off to the side a little bit, where another pathway comes up. It can actually feed some surface eruption, right? And you can actually have a lot of different systems that have different chemistry of magma that can then mix and cause these interesting chemical stories of the magma that we have all the time on our eruptions and why we measure the chemistry. And to that point, I see a question from Robert Wallace. Mahalo for your question. Is there fresh paleosaur tephra being collected from activity at the spattering areas? Yes, they are collecting that stuff and measuring it for chemistry to try to see if it's coming from that same batch or whether these batches are changing over time as well. So I thought that was cool to show a slightly different view than we normally get right there. All right, so oh, there is my S1 camera. Got lost all the way over here of what it might look like at the summit, but since it's here, we'll just take a quick peek in. Looks like I got gassed out since I reloaded this page. All right, so from monitoring, we'll transition moving into our earthquakes. And on Kilauea here, they've been still low. Here's the counts earthquakes per day. Our average is about 30 long term, right? So here we are just above 30, minutes below that. Sometimes we're like at 60, and it's all within the regular variability that we get. No huge change there for the last month. So for the last year, if I scroll it up, you can see still similarly nothing like these other peaks of many hundreds of earthquakes per week. That's just 800, 1200. We're right now around maybe 400, 200, somewhere in that range in there. That's our normal 200 earthquakes per week or so. So where are these earthquakes? Most of these are actually happening under Pahala for this count. So actually Kilauea is on a light side, even more so than appears on those graphs. If I zoom it in, you can see a little bit more of Kilauea's activity there and how much more there is down here in Pahala. So there is the distribution and cross-section and across time. And for the last month, map view there, and cross-section and across time as well. So nothing really major sticks out there that's different than we've seen usually, right? If anything, maybe all these deep earthquakes occurring offshore, probably adjustment earthquakes underneath that crust of the ocean beneath the island. That's shifting its weight around and adjusting itself constantly. Then occasionally that water mattress that's lying on below has to adjust as well. So maybe something like that.
Before you get too far,
there is
a question from Robert about the red line on the earthquake chart. What does it reference?
Okay, so let me find that one up here. So the red line, the way that this plot actually works, let's zoom in as much as I can. So on the left side of our plot, we have earthquakes per day. It's giving us, this is the measure for the blue bars. And all the way to the right side of the graph is our measure of cumulative moment. Moment is a measure of energy released. It's normally what you hear about with earthquakes. So it's about how much energy did an earthquake release, right? So it's adding up the cumulative moment across the entire time. So this line can only ever go up. You're never going to see it drop ever. It's just not set up that way. But it tells you where it steps up that you had a little bit bigger earthquake. So there's like a slightly bigger earthquake right there. Right? The biggest one on this plot was actually right over here on the 19th. And I would imagine this was, what was the 19th? I'm blanking on it right now. Was that the big Pahala earthquake that we had?
Potentially, I'll pull it up now.
If I scroll down here to the time. Wait, here. Wait. 1 month and over time. Go back to the 19th. And yeah, the big
3.8
and a bunch of aftershocks.
3.8 and Paula, yeah, 3.9.
Right in there, so yeah, it's basically telling you you had a bigger one, right? But for some reason, the energy that was released for some reason was bigger, right? So maybe in this case, it's not just, where's my graph? Maybe not just the one event, but over that course of the day, that 3 and all the aftershocks added together, how much energy they released in one day, right? So you have, this tells you more so whether the earthquakes are big earthquakes or whether they're little earthquakes. So when you see that, you can see how both little earthquakes jump up, the bar goes up, and big earthquakes also jumped up from the red line. Right. Other times you can see little earthquakes go up, but no big earthquakes are actually occurring. Right. That's kind of how you can read it together. Normally we don't go into that level of detail, but that's what the red line actually means. So that's the question.
All right.
So the earthquakes map. Here it is for the last week, and similar kind of pattern. Okay, there's a Pahala quakes. Kilauea quakes, Maunaloa quakes. There seems like there's a little more visible than we've seen in other weeks, right? There's 1.8, 1.9, 1.8. There's a little cluster over here. But these are still fairly low levels of activity of earthquakes, really. It's been almost doing nothing for a long time. There's a 2.1 right there. Somewhere on the summit. There's a 1.5, 1.7, 1.9. And over here to the northwest, a 2.4. The biggest one, right? So it's still filling and swelling, sprawling out, but it's really not showing any signs of pressurizing to the point that it's changing like the ground tilt or the GPS or anything like that, right? So we'll have to hear from our friends, Two Pineapples, whether they feel earthquakes while they're up there for several days. Chances are good, right? Have to have an earthquake report as well. So, okay. Other interesting earthquakes this past week. Moving a little further north, Mauna Kea's had a few. There was this 3.4, 13 kilometers down, a 2.4 aftershock, and another 2.2 aftershock, right? 2.2 first, and then a 2.4, right? This is just off the southwest flank of Mauna Kea over here, right? Really far down underground, although that one aftershock was pretty near the surface there. And elsewhere, you see some activity offshore here, not too far from Loihi. Most recently, 2.2. But what else? We got 2.5. Some other earthquakes happening there. Nothing to be alarmed about. But just interesting to see it. They flare up once in a while as well. So things are happening, but nothing at a fast rate that induces any concern or anything like that. So looking at earthquake rates on Maunaloa itself, let's load those up for the last year so you can see. Oh, there's the survey. Here's that little rise that comes up in Maunaloa earthquakes just over the past few weeks here, right? And interestingly, you see these are smaller earthquakes or moments not really rising too fast. But there have been some bigger earthquakes in Maunaloa that otherwise wouldn't show up in that pattern, right? You can see that we get more interested and alert when we start seeing at least 100 earthquakes per week like we had back here. But even that by itself, if it doesn't last very long, isn't really that much cause for concern. So that's really the status of Maunaloa And so switch our caption here to be Maunaloa, because from the earthquakes that are showing not that much activity, slight increase, but not as much as before we've seen in the past. Here to our GPS. And likewise, you can see extension north to south across caldera. The line is going up, but not super fast. Right, this is half a centimeter where it's come up in the past 6 months or something like that. So for Mauna Loa, pretty modest. It's still, a huge mountain. It's a huge amount of pressure when you think about it in those terms, how much magma is coming to fill it in. But it's more about, to us as community residents, when it's going to fill to swelling to bursting rather than it just filling passively, which is really awesome and interesting, but it's what it does all the time in the background. Right. That's what we like, is see it with no threat. So once again, USGS report. This is Mauna Loa's still at alert level advisory, aviation color yellow, but not erupting. Seismicity is still slightly elevated along above long-term background levels, not changed significantly, and no other changes noted here. 93 earthquakes below the summit upper elevation flanks. So that is it. That's for Mauna Loa. There's only one last thing to talk about today, but before we do, one last round of questions. And that would be the Volcano Watch. And Volcano Watch this week is recounting the travels of USGS scientists to Heraklion, Greece, the host of the Cities on Volcanoes meeting a couple weeks ago. So this is the 11th such one. There was one, the third one occurred in Hilo, actually. And essentially the scientists are presenting on dynamics and responses, including Kilauea, developing emergency preparedness, response plans, hazard zones and hazard assessments, tools for monitoring, insights from deposits, and compilations of information. So that's kind of it. The next one, I believe, is going to be in Guatemala. But some of the things highlighted in Hilo, one of the reasons Hilo is a candidate is because Hilo is on the slopes of Mauna Loa. Mauna Loa, you can see here from the saddle direction with the green kipuka, a little island of vegetation that was surrounded by this flow that came around. And I believe it says 1855, 1856, visible from a pull-off on the saddle road. It's just a little lava channel there. But there have been flows from the north rift zone of Mauna Loa towards Hilo and going backwards 84, 42, 35 to 36, 1880 to 81, 1855 to 56, and 1852. And of those, of course, the 80-81 one being the one that traveled the furthest into town. So there are lots of trails that go across there, and Guatemala is hosting this year, and they talk about, in case anyone hadn't heard the link of the story of Santorini in Greece. Thera was part of a larger island known as Thera that were inhabited by Minoans, and a big cataclysmic eruption destroyed a lot of land surface, big tsunami across the Mediterranean, and linked to the legend of Atlantis, either the city being lost to the water or falling beneath the water, or some version of that, connected to volcanoes in the Mediterranean. But that's a story, and another day. That's just Volcano Watch this week, just talking about how USGS does outreach all the way to Greece for preparedness and all of that, right? And of course, not just for Greece's benefit, but the whole international community going to attend over there.
One of the many legends of Atlantis.
Yeah, for sure. There's others that involve Hawaii. Maybe we won't bring up right now, since that might derail us for a while.
Yeah, a little bit.
But yeah, so that's it this week. We'll finish up with a round of questions, and
yeah, we had a $10 super chat come across from Robert Walt. No comment associated with that one. Appreciate it, Robert. We did have a comment from Christina over on the Captain Cook Kona side of the island. It says the VOG has been pretty much gone from South Kona for the past week or so. So they're getting a little reprieve over there. It's good to hear. You can always use it when you're dealing with the VOG for 9 months. We do have a question here from Richard, and I'm going to combine this one with another one from Victoria. They're talking about alternate interpretations, kind of what what we were just talking about there. Could the pressure drop be caused by the vent blowing out and leaking magma off somewhere else, so that the flow rate isn't dropping, but able to basically deposit it somewhere else?
That is something that volcano can do, but part of the reason I went through all that monitoring data today is to just be able to very easily say that we don't see any sign of that happening anywhere in this volcano right now.
All right. Good. I think that is the main question. Just to follow along on that and take it one step further, then. So the south flank of Kilauea, we've talked about that over the past few years, or a few years. Does that show any signs of slowing down and locking up, or are we still trucking along at that elevated rate of movement?
So the area of the south flank that was showing that elevated rate of movement was the one that is now moving back the other direction. So it seems like that elevated movement was some combination of south flank getting moved by magma filling in that area, right? And that's an area that I mean, the rift zone is kind of complex in a sense where it goes all the way down. There's a deep rift, a shallow rift that's easier, and all that, right? The deep rift is maybe I think of it as more steady going. So it's pushing the bottom structure of the south flank steady all the time, but there's a little sliver on top that can kind of wiggle back and forth a little bit. And that little sliver is the one that was wiggling extra to the south in the past, and that was wiggling back to the north a little bit. And so that could be that because that upper magma chamber area is affecting that area locally, right? Whereas deeper down, it's showing that still steady movement out. That's one possible explanation, right? That's one way to look at it. For that other question is that Victoria asked. I mean, in case she was asking it this way, right? Like showing that the north and south across the caldera, when we see the deflation-inflation events, then we see contraction as well. In that case, it's not so much that it's going somewhere else; it's just going down more, right? And so, like those instruments have a sensitivity with depth. So if there's like more magma at the shallow level, then it shows it as a building pressure, and if magma goes back straight down, that'll show it as dropping pressure without it having to go anywhere except up and down within the system too. That's just one little extra thing to mention there, right? So it doesn't have to be traveling elsewhere. And deflation-inflations, we think, have something to do with a denser gas poor magma going back down that pipeline, kind of blocking the exit of fresh stuff coming up. Then it kind of flushes out and gets replaced by the fresh stuff, and you see it kind of come back up. And normally it doesn't, normally you haven't seen it take 5-6 days, right? That's kind of a record, I think. So curious if that happens all of a sudden out of the blue. That could have some interesting discussions as far as what that might actually mean, but of course no one will know, and it's all just guesswork until we see what happens.
All right. There is one final question here about that red line that we were just talking about, that cumulative power, or that cumulative momentum. What does it represent? They understand what it represents, but what is it used for? Like, how would a scientist use that? Comparing like a big spike versus a little spike. What is that kind of?
I suppose. I mean, it's telling you where. I mean, how much energy is being released in that system, right? So I mean, it's like a big energy jump is significant in the fact that it's like if you see there's a big earthquake happening, then obviously that's what's causing it. Right? If you haven't seen an earthquake, then you go and look for one at that point in time, or you look for like a swarm of earthquakes that together as a group accomplish the same energy release as a big earthquake, for example, right? It kind of gives you the true energy measure rather than like each individual earthquake. So, because obviously having 100 magnitude 3s is different than having 100 magnitude 1s. That's kind of what it gets at.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that does it for our questions here. I hope I shouted everybody out. Do make sure to like, subscribe, share this video. That all helps the channel grow. Comment after the video ends. All that helps. We will be back next week, Thursday. Our normal time is 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. We'll be going over again the latest from Kilauea and Maunaloa, unless something comes up and we got to do a special broadcast for something special that happens. We will do that if it does, but no expectation really right now that is going to occur, but you never know. But otherwise, we will be back next week, 5 p.m.
All right, mahalo, Dane. Mahalo to everyone who contributed today, our long times and our new contributors as well. Mahalo, all you guys. It really helps us quite a bit. So thank you for that. It's been pretty quiet, but we're still trucking along. We'll keep it going. We'll be back next week, as Dane says. Until then, from HawaiiTracker.com, he's Dane DuPont. I'm Philip Ong. Aloha, everyone.